it's a mind-boggling way to pursue foreign affairs because it is a direct road to war. The world has gone mad, but especially the Anglo-Saxon world, I'm afraid. I don't know whether there is any sense at all in our little English-speaking corner of the world. I'm, of course, speaking of the United States, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. There's something profoundly disheartening about the politics of our countries right now. The deep madness, I'm afraid, is British imperial thinking taken over by the United States. My country, the US, is unrecognizable now compared even to 20 or 30 years ago. I'm not sure, to tell you the truth, who runs the country. I do not believe it is the President of the United States right now. We are run by generals, by our security establishment. The public is privy to nothing. The lies that are told about foreign policy are daily and pervasive by a mainstream media that I can barely listen to or read anymore. The New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, and the main television outlets are 100% repeating government propaganda by the day. And it's almost impossible to break through. What is this about? Well, as you've heard, it's about a madness of the United States to keep US hegemony, militarized, dominated by the thinking of generals who are mediocre intellects, personally greedy, and without any sense, because their only modus operandi is to make war. And then cheerled by Britain, which is unfortunately in my adult life increasingly pathetic in being a cheerleader for the United States for this hegemony and for war. The public has no role at all in US foreign policy at all. We have no debate, no discussion, no deliberation, no debates over voting the 113 billion, but in fact much more money spent on the Ukraine war so far. There's not been an hour of organized debate even in the Congress on this, much less in the public. What is unfolding right now is really part of a longer term planned agenda. It's not ad hoc. So here's what Blackwell and Tellis wrote in 2015. First, quote, "Since its founding, the United States has consistently pursued a grand strategy focused on acquiring and maintaining preeminent power over various rivals, first on the North American continent, then in the Western Hemisphere, and finally globally. The goal is very straightforward. It is primacy of the United States globally." In 1997's Big Brzezinski, in an article in Foreign Affairs, laid out exactly the timeline for NATO enlargement and the intention to include Ukraine in NATO enlargement, because this was already the security establishment plan. Of course, it's led us directly to the Ukraine war, which is a war over NATO enlargement. We have no honesty or discussion at all about this. The policies are owned entirely by the security establishment, the military-industrial complex, the network of, quote, think tanks, which are non-think tanks in Washington, every one of which is funded by the military-industrial complex. Interestingly, Brzezinski said in 1997 in the book, but the one thing absolutely American policymakers need to ensure is that they don't push Russia and China into an alliance together, but then he says, that's pretty much unthinkable. Don't worry about that, but that would be the craziest thing in the world. And it's exactly what these crazy people have done. It's a mind-boggling way to pursue foreign affairs because it is a direct road to war. We are in a war that continues to escalate towards possible nuclear war. Russia is not going to be defeated, pushed out of Crimea, and go home meekly and saying, we're sorry we did that. It's going to escalate if it needs to escalate. So we are right now in a spiral that is extremely dangerous. What worries me about the world is a deeply neurotic United States that aims to be number one. The war in Ukraine could end the day after Biden steps up and says NATO will not enlarge to Ukraine. Believe it. The basis for negotiation has been there for 20 years and rejected by the US. We're already past the unipolar moment. It's just that the United States doesn't know it and doesn't accept it.